Good evening. I'd like to call the February 1st, 2016 Davie County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. At this time, if you would join me in the invocation. Dear God, as we come before you this evening, we're forever grateful for the right to live in Davie County and to live in the United States and the right for self-governance. We want to thank you for all the people that are here this evening, and we appreciate their willingness to be involved in governance. We ask for your wisdom and discernment during this meeting. In your name, amen. At this time, I would ask Commissioner Barrett to lead us in the pledge.
Join me, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I understand we have a motion to alter the agenda.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move 8.3 up and make that 5.2 right after the public comments period. And that particular item is the discussion of the sales tax.
Okay.
Second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of that change, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll entertain a motion to adopt the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you to all the speakers. This time we will move to the discussion of the sales tax distribution. I will ask Mr. Ruffin to start that, please.
Some of what comments I'll make were being made because many of you weren't here at our last meeting, just to sort of chronicle how we got to tonight. Our staff was asked to look for additional revenue opportunities, and this is one of those that was brought forward. It hasn't been brought forward as a recommendation, just brought forward for the board to discuss. North Carolina law says that during the month of April, our board would have to make a decision if they were in fact to decide to change the method of distribution from per capita to ad valorem. That would have to be done in April. Clearly, we wanted to start ahead. We wanted to get out early. We wanted to get feedback from you. Last week, we met with Town of Moxville last Monday afternoon. We met with Bermuda Run on Friday morning, and this morning we met with representatives from the town of Coolamy. We heard much of what has been repeated by those representatives tonight. Possible tax rate increases were mentioned in Moxville, reduction in funds to some community services, and Bermuda Run stalling, delaying, perhaps not implementing some of the desired capital improvements that the town had been planning for. This morning, Coolamy obviously concerned about the possibility of having to shut down law enforcement, police services, or even, I think the comment was that tax rate increase would be 42 cents to replace that $150,000. So we surely have heard very clearly from, I assume all of you are from one of those three towns, probably. We've certainly heard from your representatives. And with that, Mr. Chairman, any comments that the commissioners have? We've had two commissioners who've sort of been assigned to meet with the towns. We have three, obviously, who have not. I know they've been interested in hearing tonight, and I've been keeping them informed as we've met with each of the towns, letting them know what we've heard. So I'll yield to the chair, and if you have any questions, happy to try to answer those.
The only thing, we will be taking this up in April. We will continue to gather information and input. I've been involved with the meeting, so I think I'm fairly aware of what's been the input from the towns, and appreciate that. So I'm going to be quiet and let anyone else ask a question to Mike or make a comment as it relates to this issue. So, anybody got anything they would like to add or any questions?
at this point.
I guess I'll just say that I haven't been part of the meetings, but I think it's important that those meetings continue and that a dialogue continues, and that a constructive dialogue continues. And I do think it's important to realize, as Hank said, the law of unintended consequences. I hope that everybody can think about putting themselves in the other person's shoes, think about what their concerns are, and try to find a way to work through those concerns for the betterment of all. I mean, I will say, sort of ironically, it sort of has brought the county together in a way tonight, but I want to bring the county together to the resolution of this in a way that's good for everybody. And I think the one thing that we got to think about, independent of short-term dollars and cents or even long-term dollars and cents, is relationships. Because this county was built on relationships and people talking to each other. How many business deals have been done because somebody knew somebody else and had an idea and shared that idea, and it went from there? How many times, because there was a trust between someone and someone else, was a call made that averted a bigger problem? So we all have to remember that independent of dollars and cents, there are relationships here. And we're only as strong as we are together. So I hope everybody will think about the big picture on that. Obviously, the money piece is important, but without the relationships, Davie County would not be what it is.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we appreciate your time. Please feel free to stay. We're going to have an exciting meeting, but probably not as exciting as what you just seen. But please feel free to stay. And so.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just take a few seconds here to let people that want to leave.
So anybody know this? It'll stay in the same. The rest of the county business. Exactly. Only as it affects them. Takes their particular pocketbooks.
I don't blame you. I would be the same way if I could get away with it.
If you could leave, you would too.
Thank you.
This is a welfare system. If you keep giving it to me, I'll take it.
I read something that Lou Holtz had said. Did you see that too?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a good one.
That was a real good one. He just told it like it was. Or it is. Not was, but it is. Who was that? Lou Holtz. Former football coach at NC State. And,
How you doing, man? Like I say, look it up. Amen. Amen.
talks about
Hey, Jack. Hey, Joy. Joy. I enjoy seeing the wrestling. Hey, just like Dad. Have you seen Dad's picture? better.
Love's been a wrestler than I
his doctor makes $4 million.
Good luck. See you.
But his doctor also went to school and did this and this and this. Yeah.
All right. We will appreciate the folks that have been here and are still here. So we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions, comments about the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, 5-0. Okay, next item is the county manager's report.
No report, Mr. Chairman. Give you the night off, at least from the county manager's report.
Okay. All right. Next, we have two items left under old business. The interlocal agreement with the Board of Education being the first one, and Mr. Ruffin.
All right, we have not changed the language of the interlocal, although we have had a suggestion from Commissioner Jones to perhaps consider, instead of a percentage of funding, to look at a funding that would track pupil growth, a per pupil funding. I've seen both. I've seen it across the state done both ways, so it certainly makes sense to look at that. In light of that, we have Commissioners Poindexter and Reniger are working with the school system on the interlocal. I would recommend that and I'll let you certainly talk a little more about what you want to consider. We're doing some staff work based on what Mark has brought forward to try to see if we could show what an equivalent would be on a per pupil basis versus the 41.3%. That's not yet ready. This month, though, the Education Committee meets, and so I would recommend that you defer any action on it until March, and we'll meet with them and see if this particular idea can get any traction, if it would work financially instead of the percentage. Take a look at both of them.
Mr. Jones, I know you have some feelings about this. Would you like to discuss them a little bit?
Well, I just, I think, in my opinion, we should take a look at all potential options. One of the things that had come to mind after the meeting, and I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, being open to this, is that a couple of different examples of things that potentially could happen under the scenario that we had laid out, and I confirmed with the county manager, was if we established the interlocal as it is worded now, if we were to have a situation where, just a couple of different examples. One is, and one is happening as we speak, a Christian school being initiated and brought into Davie County. Obviously, the county does not fund any part of that. But what would happen if we draw, let's just say, for instance, depending on the size of the school, if we were to draw 150 students out of the system, the student population would be reduced under the current agreement. Based on what Mr. Ruffin had indicated to me, we would still be contractually bound at that percentage. A second idea that has been brought up in Davie County, and may not occur, but it may, is what would happen if we had a charter school come into the county. For example, I know Mr. Ruffin said that had happened in Durham County before he left. That might draw 200 or 300 students or more out of the system. We would still be contractually bound at the 41.3%. So, and I'm not, as I told you, Mr. Chairman, and the county manager, I'm not hard and fast on the dollar necessarily, but I think it would be more appropriate for us to at least look at a per pupil expenditure formula versus just a set percentage of the tax base, just simply because I think it allows for us some level of flexibility. And as I said, I'm open to discuss this and look at best practices. I know I've been told that, you know, there are quite a few counties that have an interlocal agreement that do it on a per pupil expenditure basis. So that that's just a thought I had and an idea, and I'm glad, I appreciate staff looking into that and bringing that back to us next month so we can kind of see where we stand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to make a comment on that, and I certainly understand what you're saying there, Commissioner Jones, but I think there is another situation that could happen to us. We have got quite a few students that are today out of the county, and particularly over the eastern side. And with the new school, I don't know where any of those will come back or not. And we could have a situation where we could get more students, so there's a possibility.
Well, I think that just sells the point.
Right,
If the
that's what I'm saying.
population
You need to
increases,
look
yeah.
at- you need to
Yeah.
look at both
Yeah,
sides.
I think if the population increases, a per pupil expenditure formula, the funding would increase too. And it should.
Would you, Mr. Jones, Commissioner Jones, would you base that on, as we're considering the per pupil, would you base that on the 10-day enrollment, the 10-day ADM, or what would you got any thoughts on the
Well,
starting point of that?
Yeah, I think we would have to look at a certain standard, whatever that might be. I think that's the common method that you look at.
That's how that's the way the state did fund it. I assume that hasn't changed.
Right.
So-
I have no problem with listening to all potential options in terms of that. I think that's normal, yeah.
All right, well, we're not going to take any action on this tonight, as been stated, but does anyone else have any comments on that? Okay, all right, thank you. We'll look forward to discussing that some more next month. All right, the next item under old business is the utility to public water and sewer line extension policy. Mr. Ruffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Johnny's making his way up to answer any questions. You may want to add more. I wanted just to make a point. We are continuing our research on acreage fees, and so if you were to, for example, adopt this tonight, we're going to come back to you with acreage fees. Just substantially more research is needed. Acreage fees typically are to fund a capital plan, and so we want to be sure we match that fee to our capital plan and do a good job with it. We've gotten some preliminary information, but we have more to do. So I actually agreed with the comment, but it's not ready to really be tethered into the policy and in a way that we think would make sense right now. I had a couple of you over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted maybe to remind whoever it was that said that, I'm sorry I don't remember, but there was a concern that the 12 months, once you get in item K, once you get the permission to commence, that it had to be commenced within 12 months, that might be too short of a window of time, so someone may want to discuss that. I did want to mention that because it had been mentioned to me on a couple of occasions that was something that might should be rethought. We did put in the assessment for a developer coming in beyond the hydraulics assessment. We've added language to include transportation assessment and just an impact that a development or proposed extension request would have on county and state infrastructure. And I have actually had a couple of you wonder if that is building too many development rules into the process. So it's in here because we felt like the board had agreed sort of consensus to put something in for you to look at, but I recognize that you may want to assess that language and decide what you want to do. With that, Johnny, anything to add that you can think of? Any questions that you have?
I guess as we continue to refine this document, the cost for some of these studies that is currently contemplated in the document, do you have any idea what some of those might be?
Well, the hydraulics study that we require now probably is the most expensive cost of anything. It depends on the size of the project and the size of the request in terms of what the cost would be, both for example, for a transportation demand study. That cost would vary based on the size of the project. So it could be expensive, in $10,000 to $20,000 range for a large project, like a shopping center or a strip commercial mall, something like that. It could be very expensive. in the case of a light use with no real impact, where you may just have to have an XL-decel lane, not very much for an engineer to study that. So it varies. There are others, Lee, you've done this, so you may have an idea of what that cost may be, but
It does vary, and with state roads, DOT more than likely is going to require some study, to your point, Mike, regarding traffic volumes before they would authorize a driveway permit.
Are we asking for something over and above what the zoning does here? Or the technical review committee?
well, one of the points that was made, may have been made by you, John, which I thought was a good point, was perhaps that should be required at the point, along with the zoning as a part of the development ordinance, as opposed to as a part of the extension request. And maybe we had it in the wrong place. I think that's probably a good observation, that maybe we should ask, in case of our zoning jurisdiction, ask Andrew to take a look at what other assessments might be.
Are you talking about the impact?
Yes.
The impact studies?
Yes.
Yeah, and
I think that's,
I
I
thought
think
that
there's
was a
some
good
wisdom to
point.
that.
I like to put myself in the other seat a lot of times, and if I was a contractor, I think having to do this stuff twice doesn't make sense.
I spoke to Andrew during this process and just got just in passing, and asked him if they require this, and if a rezoning needs to take place, then a full assessment will be required by planning and zoning.
Impact?
An
Impact on schools, on potential,
Andrew, is that correct? Impact on schools?
what we're talking about,
Your agenda package, you have an
If you
impact
can have a full
analysis.
rezoning versus,
We provide
or
you
didn't
that
have to be
information,
rezoned. Like what we did.
roads, schools, utilities, and things of that nature when rezonings do come up. So, I think the discussion you're having is a more involved traffic impact analysis. Is what I think I'm hearing from what you're asking for, which is greater than what would be required as part of the rezoning request or from a typical permitted by right type development type project.
But the policy, such as it is, has not been adopted. There would be some redundancy in that based on what you're saying, because some of that's already done. But
well, I see no necessity to double
Right.
up on folks now. I mean, that's, I don't think we need to do that at all. We need to coordinate what our mission is here and not double impact on developers.
I mean, I think the point was the areas that are not in our zoning jurisdiction to have that kind of analysis. If we have that analysis already in zoning, we don't need to replicate it for this, but we do, I think, still need to preserve it for areas that we don't have any control over zoning.
If there's no replication. I think that's
Exactly.
absolutely.
So I don't know if there needs to be language that says unless that analysis has already been performed through some zoning study by the county, then this study shall be conducted. Maybe that's the way to go about it.
Johnny, on the question of the 12-month commencing, is there any way to put in there that the project will, what are your thoughts on that? If we went to 24 months, would that certainly accommodate that?
I just didn't want to hold that capacity up for that long. I think there would be a lot of communication between me and whoever the project is, to check in 12 months. I don't think it'd be good business practice just to pull a capacity back. I think some outreach between, whatever is going on, if the process is moving forward, if they've contacted planning, zoning, if they're waiting on permits, I don't think it'd be a good business practice just to pull it back without some conversation. So, yeah, extending it out, that's maybe, 16 months. I think if a project is available and they know they're going to do it, they should be able to know that they're moving forward in 12 to 16 months.
I certainly agree that, once someone has made a bona fide request for capacity, we've allocated it, we need to do all we can to make that project happen, within our control, but I understand the 12 months as well, so.
Mr. Chairman, there may be a word change that might allow that to occur and allow dialogue. If you look at shall be withdrawn, you could change that to may be withdrawn. And that would allow it to be the discretion of,
Mr. Lambert or the Utilities Director. Yeah.
so that's a more flexible word.
Okay.
I would be fine with that, I just don't think.
That's a good point.
I think that'd be a very good approach.
All right, well, on the utilities policy, again, let's continue to look at that, and I would really like to see this on an action item for the March meeting. So,
And, Mr. Chairman, as some guidance from my end of it, under R, those 4 items, it's what I'm hearing that have some language that if analysis has already been performed as required by the zoning offices, then that analysis can be used in lieu of an additional analysis. However, if no analysis has been performed, then it is required, something of that language. Okay, I'll make that.
I just don't think we need to
No.
put double requirements on. We don't, there's no,
well, yeah, the effect of that obviously would make projects cost prohibitive and us not competitive, so.
And I don't know what the language might be on public input. I know we talked about this in various ways. I'm not really wedded to a particular concept of public input. What I am sensitive to is giving the citizens enough notice so that they can, if they want to come forward on public comment or whatever, to speak to the issue. And I don't know if there could be some kind of, notice given. I mean, when we get our agenda packet sometimes, we get it on Friday, and things come up that we'll be talking about and acting on Monday, and sometimes that's necessary. But I think if we could have advance notice both for the commissioners and the public on, for instance, this kind of issue, then if there is any input, we can receive it. Obviously, we're limited in what we can do with that input. It has to be material to the question, it has to be within the structure of the policy, but I'd like to just see us give enough time that citizens can weigh in if they choose to.
Does notification still go out to people surrounding the area that's in question, rezonings or whatever? And how soon do those go out before?
You're talking about on a rezoning, on a public hearing for rezoning?
Yes, sir.
Those notices go out when, Andrew?
At least 2 weeks, probably.
On our agendas, we have a sunshine list, and we distribute that on Thursday before the Monday meeting. So it is short, but it does go out on that Thursday to all who are registered on the sunshine list. Now, I think when Johnny gets that request, we could certainly highlight that information on our website, perhaps even send it to the sunshine list when we get it, that there's going to be requests on a future agenda. That would give a couple weeks, maybe more notice than they're getting now. We could do that.
And if it's a rezoning request, it's going to go to the planning board first anyway.
Yeah,
And have a hearing there, and then you're going to come to you for a hearing. Now, your situation is going to be where it's not a rezoning request.
Right, we're talking about
Just,
under this policy where we're doing a sewer allocation, it comes before us, I'm just, 2 weeks, some type of notice to the area residences or businesses, something like that, similar to what we're doing for zoning would be fine with me. I'm not wedded to any particular approach, but it seems like that would make sense.
Okay.
So if there's some language we can come up with on that.
Well, I'm just trying to think through how that would work. I mean, if once Mr. Lambert's department was notified of the request, I think we could certainly, I just don't know what the timing of that would be. I mean, once he get the request, we would have to have a hydraulic study, so there would be a time elapsed between when he was notified and the hydraulic study. So certainly, once he's notified, he could share that with us, and given the fact there's gonna be a lapse of to get the hydraulic study, there would probably be, not always, maybe, but there would probably be enough time for us to have notice on that, a meeting before we would actually take it up. I mean, that would solve your issue or your concern, is if we are notified about it and it's on our agenda the meeting before it's actually asked for approval.
That would be fine, or something like that. I'm not, like I said, there's no particular approach, but just knowing about it, knowing it's coming up, citizens knowing about it, knowing it's coming up, I think would be a good thing.
And I can put a section S that says notice to public, and then in the event of an allocation request or an extension request, if the board so desires me to do so, I'll word something to that effect, and I'll based upon when Johnny first gets it. And then we'll have to make a determination as to how to notify that public.
And I think like Mike mentioned, maybe the website or something, sunshine list or something of that nature would be the best way to get it to the public. Just, there's not a lot of information, you know, it's just basic information when I get it, so we'll have to work through that.
I think one of the problems with this, and what came up here, is there is certain deadlines that these people have to meet
Right.
other places, and that's why, you know, had that rush job the last time I had to approve this.
Yeah, and that was a unique situation, so just,
Under normal situations, I don't see any problem with what you're asking for, but in emergencies, you know, we got some problems.
we can always.
But again, to me, we're allocating sewer, we're selling an asset we got and getting some money in, which to me is a good thing, so. I like that.
Okay, so, Mr. Vogel, you're gonna try to come up with some language, give it a shot as far as to put a chronology in there where it would be noticed to us, hopefully, the meeting prior to us actually hearing the formal request.
I will. I'm gonna change K to the word may instead of shall. That'll take care of your 12-month period. And then I'm also going to look at putting some language in R with regards to other analysis being performed in the event it's to be performed by zoning or development services and so forth, not being duplicated. And then I'll put a new S in that deals with notice to the public, and that once it hits Johnny's desk, then at that point in time, it'll be put on the website, also the sunshine list. Do you want me to put it to anybody else other than that at that point in time? And that the commissioners be notified of that also. So you'll have you'll have the website, sunshine list, commissioners will be notified once something hits Johnny's desk.
You know, I would just ask Mr. Ruffin to put it in his weekly report. He can notify the board that way.
We'll do that.
All right. Any other items on the sewer extension or the utilities policy? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Lambert. Right, next item is new business. Do we have any to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to commissioners' comments. Mr. Jones.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. I appreciate the constructive comments that folks made in regards to the issue of the sales tax distribution. I think it's very productive. I agree with Dan. We've got to continue on with some, I think, constructive dialogue among the municipalities in the county. And I simply think that we can work through this, and we'll work to a solution that's better for everyone, including the municipalities and their citizens.
Mr. Barrett.
Just thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Mr. Ferguson.
I would echo the thank everyone for coming, and this sales tax issue is very complicated, and we all know that, but we have got to make sure we're fair to all the citizens in the county, and we certainly will take into consideration what the municipalities have to say, but there's two sides of every issue, and we must look at that and make sure we're covering all of the avenues before we make this decision. And this decision, we have said many times, will be made in the April meeting. And we have time to discuss it with the folks, and we're open to do that at any time. And again, thank you for showing up tonight.
Mr. Poindexter.
It's always wonderful to look out and see a crowd out there, even if they don't stay, but I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I think everybody has said everything up here that needs to be said, and thank you again.
Yes, again, as always, appreciate you coming. We have a lot of faithful members that come every month, and we do appreciate that. So I look forward to working through this sales tax issue as well as the Eastern Davie sewer problem issue and challenge. And other than that, we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Have a good evening. I guess we need to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. 5-0. Thank you.
Mr. Jones abstained.
Oh.